Welcome to the Prop Talk Podcast, where we talk about all things boats. Today I've got Erick from Electrified Marina joining us. Erick started in the EV vehicle space in terms of cars and trucks and has made his way into the marine segment. He's offering a number of different boats, including an electric PWC, which you may have heard of. Erick, why don't you start things off, open up the podcast for us?
Yeah, thanks, man. Happy to be here. I try to be upfront with people and let them know, like, I'm not that salty dog boater, and if I was, I probably wouldn't be doing this. But within the boating space for 3 years now, I got my boating license when we started this business. But background in electric cars with Tesla and everything. And I met a business partner as crazy as I am. She was 10 years at SpaceX. I was 9 years at Tesla. We ended up buying a marina together, and we jumped into electric boats. And in the beginning, it was kind of interesting because our big question was like, why aren't more people doing this? When you look at the business model, it's kind of death by a thousand cuts or kryptonite to a regular boat dealership. They make so much of their overhead and off of service and repairs and maintenance, the tune-ups and everything. That side of the business is huge for them. So they don't really want electric boats to be successful. So it takes a disruptive business model in order to hit this stuff head on.
Yeah. The biggest selling point to any EV is that the maintenance costs are very low. And you're exactly right. There's a huge profit in the marine segment, specifically the service and storage. And the saying is that the best way to make $1 million in the boat business is to start with two.
That's it, man.
So
it's kind of crazy because we were at the marina yesterday, and there's a guy here that, I don't know, he spent how much money, but he had to get all the old fuel taken out of his boat, injectors replaced, fuel pump replaced, like all this work. I was like, man, you mind if we get some content of this from this? So, like, this is exactly why we do what we're doing, is not to deal with this headache, man. And it's, you wonder if boats wouldn't have this stigma about maintenance if there was electric propulsion that was more widespread. You know, it might not have this bad tone that comes with it of break out another 1,000, or the best day is the day you buy a boat and sell a boat, you know? So I don't know, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm a super advocate for electric. It's definitely not a one size fits all, but it's a one size fits most. And there's a lot of situations where it can make a lot of sense. You know, the electrification of the marine business. I mean, let's talk about it a little bit. You've been doing this for you said about 3 years now?
Yeah. We started off as just a rental business, and then very quickly got dragged into the sales and the repower side of things. And we're mainly focusing on sales right now because that's how we can have the biggest impact. Like, rentals were cool, they were fun, they made money. It was, relatively easy money, but we're not having as much of an impact as we'd like in terms of getting exposure and really making an impact in the industry. And the more people we educate and make aware on this stuff, it's kind of a no-brainer sometimes to sell boats. And I mean, I'm selling a boat today, and someone's on electric only lake, and they're buying a pontoon that's electric, and it's just a slow cruising lake. It's not huge, and they're like head over heels for this thing. And most people would see it and, a 5 horsepower pontoon, like, you're not going to go anywhere. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly perfect for these people's use case. Our entire lake's like 1.5 miles long. You don't need to go that fast.
Exactly. In instances where you have smaller bodies of water, and even some medium-sized bodies of water, specifically freshwater, or maybe someone in saltwater that stays intercoastal, specifically at low speeds, that's where these shine. And you don't have to worry about refueling. You charge at your dock. It can make a ton of sense. I mean, what were some of, obviously this is relatively new to the marine industry. It's been prevalent in the car business in the form of hybrids or even full EVs, probably for, I would say, the last 2 decades. So we've sort of fully adjusted in the auto segment and found that there's room for everything. What were some of the initial responses that you saw some of the guys saying when you first were bringing EV or electric boats to your area?
Honestly, there's still a lot of resistance and hatred. I started with Tesla in 2012, and the amount of pushback and downright negativity, it's like I've never seen someone so against a product, whether it's a means of propulsion or a technology. It's like the amount of haters out there is huge. I thought it was big in the car business, and it's even bigger in the boating world. And it's crazy. Like, people can't accept that it might make sense for someone else's use case just because it doesn't work for theirs. It's like, if you're that wakeboarder that wants to go wakeboarding 8 hours a day, you're to the extreme, or you go deep sea fishing every day, like, these boats aren't for you. And that's all. Like, we're not going to force it otherwise. We say they make sense where they make sense. And it's a lot of pleasure boaters that do under 20 or 30 miles a day and stay relatively local. You ask the average boater, what does your day look like? And we do this in our discovery calls. And we pull up a map when we're having this chat. And it's like, oh, I go to this sandbar and this cove we anchor out. And here's where we beach it. And here's the restaurant we go to. And we do this circle on this map and add like a 25 or 50% buffer. And it's like, oh, your entire day is 15 miles, and that happens a lot. It's pretty entertaining. Or we talk to people that have never owned a boat. Half of our customers are first-time boat owners. It's quite a bit.
Interesting.
First-time power boat owners. About half of those come from the sailing world, and they're used to the slow cruising electric side of things. But a lot of them, they've always wanted a power boat, but they hate the noise and the fumes. And, there's a lot of diehard people out there that are into power boats now that they're electric. And it's really going to be interesting to see what happens when we expand on the market. Even if we grow the boating market 1%, like you're talking a couple thousand boats if we were to do that. And nothing that we could even handle right now. But our target demographic, like our average buyer right now, doesn't know our boats exist. And that's our biggest hurdle right now in the electric boating space. And that gets solved with marketing and grassroots events and boat shows, but not just boat shows, because if our average buyer isn't coming to a boat show, they're not going to be walking the docks at one, so they're never going to see one. So we do a lot of collaborations with local electric car clubs, environmental groups, just anywhere that people can get on the water where the body of water makes sense. And you kind of touched on it earlier, some of the lakes, but also a lot of these protected bodies of water, coastal communities, whether it's here in Virginia Beach or Savannah or Wilmington or, in Jersey. Like, there's a lot of these protected bodies of water where a good day of boating is only 10 to 20 miles. And a lot of that time is spent anchored out, which doesn't consume hardly any electricity.
Yeah, your stereo system is not going to wear down a 80 kilowatt hour battery. Or actually, they're probably bigger in your instance. I mean, how big are those battery packs?
On our, I'd say mid-size boats, 126 kilowatt hours. So there's a lot of power. And we've got some boats with some ridiculous number of speakers and subwoofers on them. And even then, it's like 10% in an entire day. And that's like really blaring the music. I tested it out the other weekend. It was pretty great.
What's interesting to me is that the electric boating space is not new. It's just evolved, because for the longest time you had those smaller bodies of water that you weren't allowed to have a gas powered engine, or they were just they were preserves. They had electric trolling motors and a 12-volt car battery, or maybe two 6-volt golf cart batteries stuck together, so you get a little bit extra juice out of them. This is just the progression of that, and in a more modern way. Which is interesting, because the people that are against it may have even had a boat like that, even growing up. And this, like I said, it's nothing more than a progression.
Right. And Duffy has been making boats. They're mainly in Newport Beach, but they've been doing boats since the 70s. And like Elko had the first electric boat in like 1893 at the Chicago Fair. But like these have been around for a long time. It's just now batteries are getting more energy dense. We're getting planing hulls that are, electric. It's a step up from those slow cruisers that everybody was used to. And that's where things get exciting. And don't get me wrong, like they consume a ridiculous energy at 20, 30 plus miles an hour. But for some people, they don't do that for a long period of time. We just interviewed a boat rental company, and they go up at high speeds for like 5 minutes to show people what they can do a couple maneuvers. But people are enjoying just going out there and cruising around at slower speeds. So I don't know, in the right environment, it's great. If you're in Florida and you want to haul down to the Bahamas, like it's not the boat for you. But for a lot of boaters, like there's a social aspect to it. And you're not doing much talking when you're doing 30, 40 miles an hour and the wind is, way too loud for you to have a conversation.
Exactly. Speaking of the progression, I've seen Elko's stuff before. There's plenty of guys that, I shouldn't say plenty of guys. I've seen a few instances where they've taken sailboats and replaced a 3-cylinder diesel engine, and then actually installed a generator to charge their battery bank with supplemental solar power, which I thought was interesting. It's like a hybrid boat. Are you involved with Elko at all?
Yeah, we're a dealer for them. We've done a couple repowers. I think the biggest so far we've done is a 50 horsepower setup. Batteries get expensive pretty quickly and heavy
Yeah.
also. So it really takes the right application. We have a couple discovery calls every single week with people like, hey, I want to repower my boat. I want to replace this 150 on the back. And, we do a discovery call and chat with them. And it's like, oh, you go boating you go fishing and it's an hour and a half away, you're out there trolling, and then an hour and a half back. It's like you would need like 150 grand worth of batteries, so a lot of them don't make sense. But then there's some guys, we're in the middle of a Nordic, this guy's wanting to repower a big trawler, and it's a 40-foot trawler, and he only wants to go 10 knots. And don't get me wrong, he wants to do it for like 80 miles, but it's going to be a massive boat. There's a lot of people like that don't need high speed runs. So a lot of those repowers, whether it's a hybrid or a full electric, can make sense. We've probably got 4 or 5 in our pipeline right now.
No kidding. I've seen a Scout with I'm trying to remember the name of the outboard on it. Flux, that's what it was.
Yeah. They're out of Bristol, Rhode Island. Super cool company. I was actually up there a couple months ago.
Yeah, and I travel all the boat shows, or at least the boat shows that I can get to. And I've talked to some of the Mercury guys too. It's interesting, and I've talked about this on one of my last podcasts. They told me in verbatim they could build a 600 horsepower electric outboard tomorrow. And he said the limiting factor is just the size of the batteries. And he goes, as the battery technology gets more dense, energy dense, they'll be able to produce that. But with current battery tech, they're just like, hey, can't do it. But back to the actual powering unit. I've seen electric drives. We've got outboards, inboards, and a couple IO options as well. And you guys are dealing with all of those options in terms of repowers and even some of the EV boats that you're offering. What is the most popular right now and why?
Kind of a mixed bag, man. We don't have like a number one seller. I mean, we do probably, it'd be the cocktail boats or the jet skis just because they're lower priced. We move higher volume of those. It's funny because whenever you have an outdrive on a boat, it is the loudest part of a boat. Like you don't hear the motor, you don't hear anything else. The outdrive's pretty loud. And even the lower end on some motors, Vision Marine makes a 180 horsepower motor, and like the bottom end is you can clearly hear it's pretty distinct. And Flux kind of recognized that, and also the inefficiencies of it. And they've got this really cool belt driven setup, and it is almost silent. It's pretty crazy. And then like X-Shore, they've got it's just a motor to a straight shaft to a prop, and it is like as quiet as it would get. I absolutely love it. But it's also like a rudder over prop, so maneuverability at lower speeds is a little interesting, and that's why it has a bow thruster on it. But yeah, so there's a few different options out there. I don't know if there's, I think X-Shore's probably delivered more high speed boats than anybody, but that's kind of just they've been doing it the longest. But I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see how things go over the next few years. There's going to be some consolidation. There already has been. We've lost some pretty big key players out there, which has been unfortunate, but
Yamaha bought Torqeedo, right?
Yeah, which is going to be exciting because they're one of the huge players in the space. And I mean, they're probably one of the most expensive in terms of price per horsepower or price per kilowatt hour. Some would say you get what you pay for, but between them and e-propulsion, they're ramping up big time, which is exciting.
I see a lot of those Torqeedo. They have like a higher performance, almost like it's just like a small outboard with a battery built into it on sailboats, smaller powered sailboats. That makes a lot of sense, especially again for use case, smaller bodies of water or like sailboats that just aren't under power a whole heck of a lot.
Right. They're motoring in and out of the harbor practically. And like, there's not much other times they're doing it unless you're, someone that's a liveaboard that's out there actually sailing or transient kind of thing. And they use it a lot if there's no wind or what have you. And that's when you have to account for how much battery you might need, whether it's solar or having a backup generator. Like figuring out that math is pretty crucial with how you're going to use your boat.
Well, coming from the boat business, I've seen so many sailboats go in the water in the spring. They've got, 5-gallon fuel cell. And they come back at the end of the season and it's half full. And that's how much fuel they used in the entire season. Because the only time that engine's running is maybe to get it off their mooring, out to where there's some wind, and they're off.
Yeah, and it's like similar to cars, when that engine doesn't get up to operating temp and, clear out the carbon, like sometimes that is even worse for it because you're hardly using the thing. It doesn't have time to get hot and get up to operating temp. And, some could say your maintenance and your repairs are going to be worse in the long run because of that interesting use case that in terms of duration.
I'll never forget very first time I was working on an outboard. It hadn't been touched in, gosh, probably 5 years. I was maybe 16 or 17 years old, and the oil was milky. And I'm like, this motor's been underwater. Like, this thing's sunk. It's garbage. And at the time, this guy that taught me how to work on engines was like, no, it's not that this motor's never been underwater. What happens is if you don't run an engine up to full operating temp, the oil doesn't get hot enough to burn off any of the condensation that happens naturally in the crankcase. Because if you have a very hot power head and a very cold crankcase, it's going to condense whatever water vapor is in there. And guess what? Engines are right next to water. So you make a great point there. And that's that when you're not running them enough, it can create more of a maintenance nightmare, which is one of those major advancements or, major pros to having an electric drive in some instances. Now, with the IOs, I've seen, this is what interests me, right? So you've got an IO. It takes whatever output shaft and it comes out of the engine and goes into a housing. And then that housing gets shot out down at a 90-degree angle. And then it gets shot out again. And sometimes counter rotates a set of props. It's inefficient in a gas setting. What are your thoughts on some of the IOs that are in the market right now? And have you seen anything that's going to come out? Has anyone been working on any IOs that are going to basically eliminate that major inefficiency of the changing of direction of power to the actual propellers, or maybe putting in a electric motor in the actual hub?
I wish I had a ton of information on that. From what I've seen, not many people are tackling that side of it. A lot of the electric powertrain manufacturers are, they're focusing on their high voltage side of things, and they just take an off the shelf lower unit. And I think with like Flux, I think is the only one that has taken that head on and has spent a ton of time and R&D in focusing on that and fixing that inefficiency. But everybody else kind of just throws, whatever's on the shelf. And it's funny because that ends up being the only maintenance needed. We just sold an Ingenuity, and the guy's like, oh, so I'm done dealing with maintenance. Like, oh, actually, you've still got an outdrive out there that's still going to need an oil change every year. And it's like, it's the loudest part of it. It's the only inefficient component of it. Cause like when you look at the electronics today, whether it's the charging side of things or the electric motor side of things, in terms of efficiency, like they have absolutely solved that, and everything is super efficient. And when you look at gas engines at a 20-30% efficiency rate, which is abysmal, like everything's lost in heat practically. It's just nothing compared to electric. It doesn't stand a chance. And you mentioned energy density earlier, and that's the roadblock right now. That and pricing a little bit. But there's a lot of people where pricing isn't as big of a variable in their purchase decisions.
Yeah, I mean you're gonna have that anywhere. In the area that I'm in, it's very much what the customer likes, not how much it costs. And you'll have that everywhere.
Yeah.
It's something that it's a problem for you and I, but not a problem for them. But with the IOs, so you say they take an off the shelf IO. What brands are you seeing? What brand are they using? Because there's really only two.
So like our Ingenuities that we sell, they've just got like a Bravo 3 outdrive. And like you've got an oil change and zincs, and if you're keeping the thing in water. But otherwise there's not a whole lot out there unless we're doing repowers, and that's just kind of comes with whatever boat comes to us.
And with being it's an electric boat, it still has a cooling system, right?
Correct. But those components don't get near as hot, so that coolant doesn't break down. And a lot of the times they take seawater, seawater intake runs through a strainer, runs across a heat exchanger. And then the other side of that heat exchanger is where the ethylene glycol system is. So there isn't much maintenance needed on that side. It's not like it's getting exposed to super harsh elements, and batteries and motors don't get super hot. An electric motor can if you're running it hard near wide open throttle for a long time, but they've got it solved pretty well in terms of cooling. It's not like in the automotive world where you put a big radiator and you run air across it. I mean, these boats are sitting in a heat sink. So you just take in enough seawater and it's going to solve your thermal problems.
Yeah, and that's one thing. It's never going to get as hot as like an exhaust manifold on a boat.
Right.
You're exactly right. It still generates heat, still needs to cool off. I just was curious because you look at a Bravo 3 outdrive, it's got a water pump in it. I'm like, I wonder if they use that, which I'm sure they do. I was watching this, or I was looking at this Facebook post a few weeks ago. It was actually an Elko Facebook post, and they posted like a 12 or 14 foot John boat with I don't know what power choice they have for that, and it had a water like a cooling indicator. In the business, we call them a pisser. And someone's like, "That's not gas powered; it has a pisser." I was like, dude, they still you still have to cool them,
right? Right. Still needs lubrication, and that's like, I don't know. We're brutally honest with a lot of things, and like that's why you never see in our marketing materials 0 emissions. It's like it's coming from somewhere, whether it's coal or natural gas, or nuclear powered. Unless you've got like a boathouse covered in solar, like there's going to be some emissions. It's not powered by unicorn farts. And then same thing with the maintenance. It's like this eliminates like 90% of your maintenance, but you still might have some zincs if you've got an outdrive, you've got an oil change, and there's going to be other stuff that goes wrong. It's still a boat, whether you're doing a bilge pump or 5 years from now you've got some electrical wiring that needs fixed or upholstery, a bimini top, what have you. And so there's still going to be some responsibilities there. But a lot of our customers are first-time boat owners, so we're the ones setting expectations, and I don't want to see, hey, maintenance free, because like that's going to be nightmarish. It's going to come to bite me later when a bilge pump goes bad or they've got to get the bottom painted or something. So I don't know, it's fun setting those expectations and holding their hand for the first time when they come on.
In the boat business or anything that's related to water, there is no such thing as maintenance free. You make a great point. Really, nothing ever is maintenance free. I mean, you build a new house, there's maintenance on that. You buy a Tesla or a Ford, there's still maintenance. What a lot of people forget is that EVs in most cases still have oil in them, and even oil filters.
Yeah.
It's not maintenance free. It's like reduced maintenance, a lot more infrequent. Whereas you have let's just use like a Volvo Penta outdrive. You're doing spark plugs, you're doing raw water pump, you're doing your outdrive maintenance, you're doing gimbal bearings every 2 to 3 years. You're greasing those with electric. You kind of eliminate a lot of that, especially with the outboards. Outboards they're clean and easy.
Yeah.
And with all the technology advancements in efficiency and outdrives, and even some of the PWC stuff, battery technology is one of the biggest questions that that I'm getting. And you do a little bit of looking around on the internet, and you'll see that companies like Toyota, and even some rumors about Tesla are creating a solid state battery. There's even some rumor about sodium solid state battery, which sodium is one of the most prevalent materials on Earth, which gets exciting because then you think my interpretation of that is that the cost is going to come down. With solid state batteries expected to enter the market, how do you think that will translate into electric boats? I mean, where do you see that kind of coming into place? Have you heard anything? Have you had any indications from the manufacturers? Like, where's that stand today?
Honestly, I was in the automotive world, starting in 2012, and it was probably every damn week we heard of a new breakthrough, whether it was a college or some think tank or, something. It's like, oh no, new battery breakthrough. This is going to change the world. And like none of those have come to fruition. And there's been thousands of breakthroughs. And I remember Elon, I don't know, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and he was just like, if someone just brings me a working cell, a production ready cell, like you will be very rich. Like we will make this happen. And nobody's done it. So I try not to spend much time on it, whether it's researching it or staying on top of it, because that's not going to affect what I'm doing right now. Am I going to just stop selling boats because it's coming soon? So I try not to spend too much time on it, any resources on it. And that's what I tell people too. It's like, you can buy a boat here and now and enjoy it for a couple of years. Cause like as soon as that stuff comes to market, it's going to go to the most profitable use cases first. And boats are probably 5 to 10 rungs down that ladder. Automotive will get it first, but there's so many applications above that where it's military or somewhere else, that is going to get that before us. And until it's cheaper and economies of scale kick in, it's not going to have that big of an impact on the boating industry. It's going to take some time. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm excited about it and I'm all for advancements in tech, but I've just heard it too many times to, get excited because it's just like hydrogen. It's like, cool, yeah, it's great, but like it doesn't make sense yet without a breakthrough. And it's been close. And I mean, I remember applying for jobs in 2010 to work on hydrogen projects, and they're doing the same stuff we were doing 20 years ago. Like, it's nothing new or exciting. So I don't know. I try not to hold my breath on any of that stuff.
Yeah, cell phones will get it first, and then, like you said, military, and then cars, and then maybe like motorcycles.
Right, right.
And then like your grandmother will get it in like I don't know, some like health device, and then
Right,
like
pacemakers or hearing aids or that's like high dollar insurance coverage, but like consumer boating or PWCs are pretty low on that list.
Yeah, and then it once they have about 10,000 of them laying around, they're like, what do we do with these things? Someone will be like, oh, have you thought about putting it in a boat yet?
Yeah, and that's when it's going to be exciting, man, because like we're selling boats now, and some of these are $200,000-$300,000 boats, and these people would throw another $100,000 at it for double the range. And so there's going to come a time, it might be next year, it might be 5 or 10 years from now. I think it'll be 5 to 10, where it'll be like, hey, you bought this boat with 40 miles of range. Like, how does 400 sound for $50,000? And now we're doing these retrofits. Like, the rest of the boat is still good. It was built to last. The motor is still perfectly fine. And now we're just doing retrofits of upgraded batteries. And the cool part is, like, the batteries we're taking out, they're recyclable. We get calls all the time for people wanting to recycle our batteries. And it's like, guys, we haven't replaced any yet. Like, we've done some lead acids that we've taken out and repowered with lithium. But I have boats. We just sold one last week that was 8 years old, a rental boat that was used in Southern California 300 days a year. And that battery has like 85% of its life left. So it's like these things aren't falling and dying like people would expect. And I don't know, I wish if I got like a few less calls from recyclers, it'd be great, because we haven't replaced any yet.
Yeah, I've watched a few videos on the lithium recycling process, and they're already making attempts to, introduce methods that can be widespread that can turn that into something useful, whether it goes back in a battery or it's used for something else. So there's plenty of applications you can use lithium for, but current battery tech is nothing to shake a stick at. And in the last 10 years, I mean, it's come a long way. And to piggyback off of, hey, like, we haven't recycled very many batteries. I've read plenty of articles of Teslas that have 300,000 miles on it, that are showing 91% battery life remaining. I think a lot of people get the misconception that these batteries are a lot like the batteries they buy in cheap electronics from China, which is not the case. It's not your iPhone battery. It's not your Nintendo Switch controller battery. It's not anything like that. These are very different. They're cooled. They're made from higher quality materials, and they're built in a factory that you probably could eat off the floor.
Right. And that's what I always love on social media. I see someone's ignorance so quickly, and they're like, oh, just wait till you have to replace the batteries in 2 years. It's like, dude, like any automotive battery has a 10-year warranty. Like, do you think they're dropping like flies? Like, that's not how this works. And you could just tell how uneducated someone is when they make a comment like that. And we try not to waste too much time on them, because those guys definitely aren't buying our stuff. You can tell just the type of questions they're asking if they're a potential customer or not.
Yeah, I totally agree. Battery tech is constantly evolving. I mean, we just talked about it, but I 100% agree with you. There's just a big misconception that they're just going to go bad.
Yeah.
When you think about this from a very logical point of view, how long does a regular, let's just say an IO or an inboard or an outboard last, right? I would say that number is going to be between 10 and 20 years. Before you're going to say, all right, I want to repower. With your use case, I would say batteries are somewhere in that range as well. So how is it ultimately that much different than a gas powered alternative at that point?
Yeah.
And it's probably going to cost about the same too.
Yeah. I always try and break it down like as simple as possible. It's like you have a gas engine that's made of thousands of moving components that's controlling explosions with perfect precision and lubrication. And the second you don't have one of those things, like stuff's blowing up and grenading. A battery might have a relay, It doesn't have a whole lot of moving parts. A motor might have some if there's, some gear reduction or something in there. But when you just look at from the number of moving components in comparison, and it's usually around like 1/10 to 1/20th of the number of moving parts. Just in terms of the engineering side of things, like this stuff is going to last longer. And when we went to visit Flux, it was pretty cool. They had two motors there kind of facing each other, and they were connected, and one was driving the other, and the other was doing regenerative braking, essentially. They were hooked up to a battery bank. They had some motors with 1,400 hours on these things with zero maintenance. It's like, for the average boater, that's like, 15 to 20 years of boating with zero maintenance on your powertrain. It's kind of crazy to think about. They mentioned like they have a belt in there that should have, a 5 to 10 year maintenance cycle, but they've been running those two motors for that long without any problems or any repairs, which is kind of crazy to think about.
The two biggest enemies for anything in the marine business are lack of use and lack of use or misuse. I guess was the right way to say it. I was going to say it a different way, but not appropriate. I would say, yeah, with an electric powertrain, let's break it down into its pieces. If you just have a motor by itself, the only moving part is the shaft and the rotor inside.
Right.
That's it.
Not a whole lot to it.
It just needs some power.
Right.
Which is really cool. And with EVs sort of taking over, well, not taking over, with EVs being introduced into the marine segment, they found a really defined place in the EV market. We've got charging stations. Tesla's got the largest charging network, and you've got Electrified America coming in. With the boat business, we're already set up for this. 99% of docks already have power to them. Have you seen any potential issues with charging boats at the dock? Are there any hurdles we'll have to overcome? I mean, is this something as simple as, hey, I keep my boat at XYZ Marina and I want to plug it in there?
It's kind of a loaded statement, but it's one thing we always get. It's like, oh, where are you going to plug it in at? It's like, do you have a marina without electricity? Because those are few and far between. Like, most of them have electricity. And then a lot of them have 30 to 50 amp service, but something they do in the marina and even the campground space is they daisy chain units together. And so like a 50 amp circuit might have 3 to 4 pedestals on it. The problem is the average gas boat out there, they might pull, 5 to even, 10 or 20 amps if they've got, a water maker on board, a AC unit on board, a refrigerator on board, and like all their house loads are pulling off of that. The problem's going to become when you put an electric boat on that same circuit, it can pull 40 amps on a 50 amp circuit. So you can overload a circuit relatively quickly. And in addition to being in the boat business, we have a small marina that I'm at now. It's 16 slips, but we're also redeveloping a big marina. It'll be 250 slips when we're done. And chatting with a lot of the marina developers, the designers, the ones that get it, they are pushing to have a few dedicated electric boat spaces, and so they're not telling them to make your entire marina electric boat ready, but have 10% of it with the home runs, they call it. And so it's like, hey, this slip has a dedicated 50 amp, this has a 50 amp, and that way it can have its own circuit. And when you've got your transformer out on the dock, those home runs are relatively cheap. So they are a bit of forward thinking on that end. That will be an issue we run into. And honestly, it's happening at campgrounds. Those get overloaded when an electric car plugs into it. But a lot of these are old and dilapidated and need repairs anyway. But the other side of that is the fast charging side of things. So you mentioned the Tesla network. There's a company called Aqua Superpower. They saw what Tesla did on land, and they're doing it on water, and they're deploying these fast charging stations kind of anywhere that there's demand. And so we work with them pretty closely. And anytime we have a couple boats in an area, they'll start the conversations of putting in a fast charger 100% on their dime. They cover all the install costs. And then they do a revenue share model with the entity, whether it's a marina or a restaurant or, whoever owns that dock. And so that is coming very quickly. And the biggest struggle there, it's funny, you're trying to give away a free product that's going to add value to a business and put them on a map. And there's a very good chance they're going to have the only fast charger in that waterway. And most of these marina and restaurant owners are so narrow-minded and so short-sighted that they don't want it. And those are the same people that think electric cars are a fad that are going to disappear tomorrow. And it's like, they're selling millions of those, okay? Millions. I'm not talking a couple thousand. Like, it is like 10% of new car sales. Don't get me wrong. It took 20 years for them to get there, or, call it 15 years since, the first compliance cars are coming out, and this is so early in the boating space. Most of these people can't even see it, and whenever I try to convince somebody to put in charging stations, I offer to host an event there and show them like, hey, I'll host a mini boat show. I'll bring 4 to 8 boats over here, invite everybody out, and I will fill your entire parking lot with people interested in electric boats. Or sometimes all it takes is, we call it butts and boats. I will bring a boat over or two, give them a ride, and that's when the light bulb goes off. And it's like, aha, this makes sense. I get it. But a lot of times it's hard to get to those decision makers. It's the manager that's stonewalling you, and no, they're not going to be interested in electric boats. It's like, they're not interested in a free amenity. Like, would they have turned down a free fuel pump or a free Wi-Fi for their docks? Like, this is $100,000 amenity, and it's sometimes difficult to give it away for free. And it's I love the irony there, because I used to do it when I was at Tesla. I worked for the charging infrastructure program, and we'd give away free chargers back then. And I would get malls and hotels and shopping centers like, nah, we'll keep an eye on the industry. It doesn't make sense. It's like, what do you have to lose? These are free. There's no contract for this. You're just too narrow-minded to just use a little bit of critical thinking skills. It's mind-boggling.
And I think about that now. When I vacation, especially in cities, I try to get a Tesla Model 3. It's just an easy car it's just a very easy car to drive. Some of the autopilot, for me, it just makes a lot of sense. And I stay at hotels that have chargers.
Right.
And I won't stay at one that doesn't.
Same. We plan all of our trips, our Airbnbs, everything on it. Like, electricity is cheap and plentiful. So even if they charge you for it, which most of them don't, because it's half the time it's not worth it. But like, on average, electricity costs $1 per hour that you're there using it. And most cars will be done in 10 to 12 hours if you have an empty battery. So for them to attract you to their place of business to stay at a hotel for a week, and that acquisition cost is $10 in electricity, like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Just jumping back to the marine end, it's funny how like the marine business is sort of almost following step by step what the carp business did. But with the charging network at the actual like the marinas, the slips, really the biggest hurdle they have is just getting enough power and just adding additional lines to charge these things, and then getting business owners that are willing to set up charging stations at restaurants or places. It's not a final destination, but it's a destination along a route. And that's where you see the industry's headed.
Yeah, and it's like there's a couple components to that. Like, most of our boats can charge perfectly fine on dual 30s or just a regular 50 amp shore power. You don't need special adapters or connections. Like, it's the charge cable that comes with the boat that can plug into that. And that's what most people charge at home as well. But a lot of these marinas, they half the time when you approach a utility company and say, hey, I want more power, here's the demand I'm going to have, that utility company will cover those make-ready costs because they want to be able to sell you more electricity. And especially once you dangle out a fast charger out there, they are excited about it. So there usually isn't a massive upfront infrastructure cost to get more electricity to your site, like compared to fuel. I mean, we're getting quotes for adding fuel to our bigger marina. It's going to be just short of $1 million, literally $1 million. It's crazy how much it's going to cost. And then the hazards with it are outrageous. It's like, now I've got tanks. They need it inspected all the time. Like, it's just such a huge headache. But we realize like gas and diesel isn't going anywhere. Like, that's going to be here for quite a few decades. And then there's going to be those applications where electric might not ever solve, and we're very realistic and down to earth when that comes into play. And so like, we're going to be adding fuel to this marina.
I think that's smart. And you have the perfect mindset on it, that it is not a one size fits all, but it makes a ton of sense. And we're repeating ourselves here, but it makes a ton of sense for so many different things, which is what gets me excited. And the noise is one of the things that gets me excited also, because there's so many times where you get, dinner cruise and you just want to putt. And I've been in a big V8 IO driven boat before, and it's the constant humming and whining of the engine. It's just like, it's just silent. And for anyone that hasn't experienced it, it's amazing.
That's why we do so much advocating to go to these events and put people out there. Even if you're not a buyer, like, come for a boat ride, you will experience it and you will get it. Just like your first ride in an electric car. It's like, once you've driven in it, it's silent, you feel that instant torque. It's like, okay, I get why people would like this. And that's our goal. We're not here to shove it down anybody's throat. I just need you, by the end of this conversation, to understand that there is a fit for this stuff. And Yeah, we were just at the Bay Bridge Boat Show, and there was a guy there who I took him for a ride. He was a sailboater, and he was just laughing while we were out there cruising to get out of this marina. And he's like, "This is so silent." He said, "I've got no fumes." I was like, "Yeah, most people don't, they don't realize how big of a benefit that is." And he was telling me, he's like, "Man, there was a time I had a tailwind on my sailboat, and we were going up the river." And he said he had to keep tacking side to side because the fumes were building up at the back of his boat, and all of his guests were getting headaches. And like he had to tack side to side just so they didn't die. And like, I mean, that kind of brings up another side of this stuff that we don't talk about much, but like there's boat explosions from fumes building up in a bilge all the time. You see it in the news, I feel like damn near every week during boating season. And then like there's the unfortunate times where people die at the back of the boats from carbon monoxide poisoning. Like we don't mention that. You'll never see that in our marketing or in our selling points. But like imagine if electric boats were just out there killing people left and right. And it's like, you make a simple mistake of not turning on a blower and your boat explodes. And that's just accepted as normal. These things would never sell.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few on social media. Qualified captains posted a few. I'm sure you're
It's unfortunate. And it's a simple mistake, and it's just like, oh, he was in a hurry after fueling, or God forbid he had a leaking gas line, and now like people are flying 20, 30 feet in the air, and some people might die. Like and people just accept it, like, oh yeah, made a mistake, forgot the blower. And it's normal.
Here's an interesting fact. Did you know, or let me ask you, you may or may not know, when you're fueling a boat, do you run the bilge blower on or do you leave it off?
So I think I mentioned my limited experience in boating. I'm going to guess that you leave it off because it could create a spark if there's fumes in there already and you run it. No, I don't know.
No, that's exactly right. Too many boaters think that when you're fueling, you want to evacuate all the fumes from the engine bay while you're pumping it with gas. Well, in most cases, when you're fueling, you're not actually getting any fumes into your engine bay because you've already run the boat at that point. And if you run your bilge blower, the train of thought is that the fumes will make their way into the engine bay if you are running that, because there's fumes in the air. So I've seen, and that may not be the result of, those explosions that have happened with the engine bays blowing up, but it could be. But for anyone listening, it's keep them off.
Yeah, good to know, man. It's kind of crazy too. I have very limited experience with gas boats, and my daughter's 10 years old now. She grew up with riding in electric cars. We've never owned a regular conventional gas car. Like we've had a couple plug-in hybrids that she'll hear the gas engine sometimes and you're like, oh, that's the engine, right? And I'm like, yeah, but that's abnormal for her. And we were at a restaurant at the end of the season last year, and there was a guy just starting his, I don't know, he had like an old Evinrude, and it was like smoking as he's trying to start this thing up, and you could just hear it struggling and like it's smoking. She's like, Daddy, is that on fire? I'm like, yeah, it's just kind of normal. She's like, what do you mean? Should we go help him? I'm like, no, he probably does this every day. I'm like, it's just normal with those. So, why doesn't he get electric? I was like, well, I'd go ask him, but now's not the time. We'll offer to give him a ride if we see him at the sandbar.
Imagine going up to him and telling him that, hey, I sell electric outboards while he's trying to start an old two-stroke. He'd probably be pissed.
Yeah, not. There's a time and place, so that is not it.
Yeah. Have you seen the Arc surf boats?
Yeah. Oh, so cool. It's I don't know, irritating. We represent like 90, probably 95% of the electric boat market. We're even signing LOIs and partnerships with people that haven't even come to market yet. And Arc, it wants to be direct to consumer. They're going the Tesla model. And like I don't know.
It's not going to work.
We'll see. Time will tell. Tesla pulled it off, but I can tell you personally, there was some nightmares, teething pains on expansion. And I'm hoping that when and if they get to that point, that's where we come in. Because I was pretty against dealerships in the automotive world. These guys play middleman and they just make everything more expensive. But one manufacturer can't expand quick enough in a timely manner and give a level of support that is needed without partners in it. And Taiga learned that, unfortunately, when they were expanding relatively quickly, and we're partnering with them and doing a heck of a lot with them. They've got a pretty exciting future. But I want to sell their boats, and they won't let me right now. We're going to keep working on it, though.
Yeah. And so this is just my thought, and I'm sure you'll agree with this. The Tesla model selling direct to consumer versus the boat model selling direct to consumer. The only reason why the car model worked is because they have scale. In the boat business, Arc may only sell 400 boats their first year, if that.
That lot less.
They might
do a quarter of that. I'll be impressed.
I was going to say they might even only sell 100. And
Yeah.
how do you keep the lights on when you've got 100 boats in an early run that's probably going to have somewhere around a 40, 50, 60, maybe even 70% failure rate? And by failure rate, I mean just some sort of warranty claim that's going to happen during the first, say, 3 years of ownership. Whether it's a switch, a rocker switch, or maybe a catastrophic failure. I think this is just what my gut tells me is I think that their ambition now is to sell direct to consumer, but I wouldn't be shocked if in 3 to 4 years they've got some product out, they've got some issues, they've got some major hurdles in terms of just logistics and getting these issues fixed, that they call you.
Let's hope, man. And like I wish them the best. And they're piloted by some very, very smart people. It's funny. It's a lot of my business partner, Erin. She was at SpaceX, so it's her old colleagues doing it. And you know, we invite them to events and everything, and they spend most of their time in Austin and like Tahoe. But I think as soon as they want to expand past that or deal with some of these teething pains, hopefully we come into the mix because they've got a awesome freaking boat. And I wish they took their powertrain and put it into other boats, because like wake boats are awesome, but it's like, it's this one specific use case. And like, there's a lot of other use cases out there that are just dying for, you know, massive batteries and efficient systems. And just like the tech side, you can tell they weren't boat builders to start, and they're coming in on the tech side. Just a touchscreen with a good user interface. You know, everyone's used to this like old school Garmin product or, you know, these old gauges. And that's kind of what I like of what's happening to the industry. And not that everything needs to be a touchscreen. I think there needs to be some tactile buttons and switches. But there's no reason you should have this tiny little, you know, instrument cluster that's like old and pixelated and garbage. Like touchscreens are here and plentiful and not too expensive. So it's going to be interesting, some of those innovative concepts that come to the market because of the electric boat space.
I totally agree. And I have a Mastercraft surf boat, so I'm very much a surf guy. And you know, earlier when we were talking about fumes, you're behind the boat. I mean, you're directly behind the boat. And is it unbearable? No. The manufacturers have done a lot to mitigate the smell behind the boat, but it's still there. Some of the manufacturers have switched to, instead of just through hole exhausts, they have a silent choice, which, you know, much like an IO, spits out the exhaust below the waterline, but it's still there. And that gets me really excited for two reasons. Is first that they promise these incredible range. The boat's going to have a ton of runtime, and on top of that, there's no fumes behind the boat. It's incredibly silent, super quiet. For anyone that's listening that's never been in a surf boat, one of the biggest hurdles that I have, at least, is that the engine is built to produce a ton of torque. Coming off the engine is a reduction gear, and that goes out to a propeller that's pitched in such a way that it is just built to push water. And when you have those two things together, the engine runs at incredibly high RPMs. When you're surfing, you're somewhere around 4,000, sometimes 4,500, depending on what the load is. And with the ARC model coming out, it's like press and go. The only thing you hear is just sometimes the cavitation of the prop.
Yeah, and that's what's the coolest thing, man. When we do boat rides at these boat shows, you know, we'll get pushed off the dock, and then we're in gear, in motion, and everyone does one of these, and like, wait, it's on? Like, yeah, we're underway. Here we go. And it's just like, it kind of throws them for a loop, you know, because they're used to this feedback, this noise. And like, don't get me wrong, some people need that, but I was the biggest gearhead before. I had a 500 horsepower BMW, and I rode in a Tesla Roadster, and it ruined me. And torque, the simplicity. And like now I've got electric motorcycles, electric boats, I got electric truck, and it's like, I don't miss it often. One day I might have an exotic that I start up, you know, a couple times a month to go out for a fun leisurely drive. But in terms of like a daily driver, my regular use case, like I don't miss it that much, you know. And I don't know, it's interesting. Everyone's going to be different, and I say different strokes for different folks, literally.
Yeah, and that's the truth. And then with Taiga, I mean, they had all the hype for the longest time. They were like, products coming out, it's coming out. I actually worked for a dealer that was going to be, they may have had some affiliate with them. Is Taiga direct? They're still direct to consumer.
They started that way, but they are very much engaging in the dealership model now. I think they realize the scaling side of things, you know, and we helped them quite a bit before with distribution. We'd get a truckload of them, of taiga orcas, and even the snowmobiles, the nomads, and we would deliver this one to Ohio and Georgia and Jersey, and it was really cool. And the other side of that is too, a lot of these people buying them, they had never seen one in person before. So now we're doing like a first time orientation with these things and showing these people, and they are just head over heels happy with these damn things. And now they're not the nuisance on the lake anymore. They're not lake mosquitoes, as people call them, because they're not near as loud as an average 4-stroke or even, an old 2-stroke PWC. So I don't know, it's going to be pretty interesting to see what happens to that space. But they're this tiny little startup, and I say tiny, they've built, a little over 1,000 units, but there's nobody else doing it. You look at all these Goliaths in the room, and they're just so conventional and so old school. And, you can find some concepts that they released 5, even 10 years ago. Some of these guys like, oh, we're going to have this e-ski. And it's like, you've got nothing in production. It's just, I don't know, it's irritating sometimes when you see how slow and how just kind of archaic some of these conventional builders are. And even in the boat space, anybody that's moving and shaking is a startup, or they partnered with a startup.
Yeah, it's like when Sea-Doo came out with that, almost like that foil board. I forget the foil board. I forget what they called it. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It's kind of like a flight board, but it had like a handle pull on it. It was kind of interesting looking, and then they just kiboshed it, and now they're selling Manitou, and they're getting rid of all their BRP outboards are gone. Evinrude outboards are going away, or if they're not already gone.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. Yeah. I would have expected something from Yamaha, Sea-Doo, Kawasaki, I don't know, like just a modern rendering, or just like some technology that they've produced. Like Kawasaki's bringing back 2-stroke dirt bikes, which is like, it's fantastic. I mean, the people have been wanting 2-stroke dirt bikes back for a while, but like, why aren't we going like, where's the EVs? They've got like electric motorcycles, they've got electric kids, like I forget what they call them, like the little bikes, like trainer bikes.
Little e-bikes.
They've indicated they wanted to do it, and they stopped. They could be the first to market.
Yeah, I kind of like it though, because it allowed Taiga to get in the space and monopolize it, and like they don't have competition even now, and it's kind of what we say about us. 3 years ago when we jumped into this, it's like, why is nobody else doing this? But even today, there's nobody else that's an electric-only boat dealer out there, which is kind of crazy. And but we need more of them. Like I will very much open my playbook or sell our licensing rights for close to nothing for other people to open up Electrified Marina dealers across the country, because we can't do it on our own. We get invited to events around the world, and we have to turn these people down, but there's nobody else out there doing it like we are that's focused on this stuff. And it's unfortunate, and the lift would be a lot less if there was, a lot of us working together.
I think the next statement will speak for pretty much any new industry, in that if you're going to sell something, you have to do it. You can't be like, oh, we sell boats and we have some electric product. You have to say, we sell electric boats, to really make a stance in the market.
And that's what messed up the automotive world. You go to even today, go to a Ford or a Chevy dealer or having that. Yeah, it's terrible, man. You could secret shop any one of them, and they're going to crap all over electrics. I don't know. It's definitely an uphill battle.
Well, and I forget it was a Car and Driver article. I read that the average like days in inventory for a Mustang Mach-E is now over a year. Wow. Yeah. And you're right.
It's an awesome car.
Yeah, no, I have nothing. I mean, there's obviously some caveats to the Mach-E versus its competitor, which is the Model Y, but it's interesting because they're not advocates. It's like, this is a company that has sold the most pickup trucks for like 30 years. And they're like, oh, we're going to come out with an electric sedan. Maybe make a different brand and sell it that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I could go on and on about the marketing side of things, but like when you talk to people and get them in the vehicles, I've got a Ford Lightning. And like, I've got a lot of blue collar friends, and like, once they see it and start thinking about it, I mean, just the boat mechanic that was here yesterday, talking to him about it. And it's like, most of his work is local. He's not driving across the country every day to work on stuff. And I've got, some friends that have electrician businesses, plumbing businesses, and like those vehicles, the service vehicles, stay local all the time. And you see a lot of these municipalities switching their first responders, like their cop cars. Like, that is the perfect use case for them. And the savings they're getting on the fleet side is absolutely massive, whether it's the school buses or cop cars. Like, there's a lot of idle time there, a lot of low speed, predetermined routes, like including like last mile delivery stuff. it's like you're dumb not to go electric when it comes to those applications.
Will you switch to electric? Will you have a fully electric fleet for your marina as well?
In terms of what?
Cars, trucks.
So we do almost now. My employees have Teslas. I've got a Ford Lightning. We tow with a hybrid when we're doing long distance stuff. There's very few times where we use diesel or gas, and that's if we're moving cross country or something, and that's when time is money, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
That's when we're brutally honest about it. But like anything within 200-300 miles, I'll drive my Lightning, stop once for lunch or dinner, and get back on the road, you know. But no, we'll definitely be 100% electric where it makes sense.
Yeah, but there's, like you said, there's use cases, and there's a lot of times where it does make a ton of sense. So what is the full lineup of brands? I know we've kind of bounced around, point blank, like what are the brands that you're selling today?
Whew. So it's quite a bit. Flux, who we've partnered with, they power the Scouts and Highfields. X-Shore has the big 26-foot Elex and the 21-foot bow rider or cabin cruiser. Vision Marine has a very quickly growing lineup of boats with their 180E powertrain. We've partnered with Candela, which is the cool foiling stuff. Hydroflyer, which has foiling stuff. Halavai's got a pontoon coming out. Elveni in Europe. Rand over there in Copenhagen. Taiga, obviously, Ingenuity, which has some awesome freaking party barges. Voltari, Novolux that we do a lot of repower stuff with. I think that's everybody. It's quite a bit. We try to kind of represent everybody in the space. There's a couple I can't mention yet that we're still working with but we get approached almost daily, if not weekly, with people that are coming to market soon. We just signed with Voltaic Marine. We got a LOI with them. They should have a product coming, I think, at the end of this year, early next year. But a lot of it, for these guys, the manufacturing side of things, they want to reach out to us. A lot of it's for market research, but it's almost becoming overwhelming with how much time it takes to jump on a call, multiple calls to entertain these guys. But we try and represent everybody and be brand agnostic. And that way, when like a client comes to us, their use case, their budget, their needs dictate which route we take them on in terms of boat purchasing. Because the last thing I want to do is represent one manufacturer and force this one product into their use case when it might not make sense completely. So we very much try to be brand agnostic and represent as many boat companies as possible.
I think that's good. Where the market's young, you're doing a great job, educating the public. I mean, I follow you on socials. I see your posts. It seems like an obvious first choice for most, just because, like you said, there's not really, if any, other people doing this. And I know we've kind of dabbled around this, but are there any, are you friendly with any of these other guys that are sort of making the switch to being a fully EV, electric boat market?
There isn't many of them. We try to chat with everybody we can that's in the space. Our friends, Emo Electric up there in Long Island are awesome. I think they represent Flux right now, and they do a ton of the lower horsepower stuff. Elk Rapids up in Michigan, Signature Yachts up in Seattle, Nautical Ventures down there in southern Florida. But there's not a whole lot out there right now, but we try and talk to everybody we can in the space because we need to work together on this stuff. It's not us against each other. It's us educating the public, and especially when it's not average boat buyers, it's people that aren't boat owners. So it's like we can expand this market. It doesn't have to be this super competitive thing. It's kind of like the early days of the electric car stuff,
I get you. And what if, let's just say someone's listening right now and they're thinking about getting into the electric boat business, what advice would you give them?
Hold on. If you'd have told me it was going to be this, I don't know, Elon and Alex Hermosi have this thing. It's like chewing glass and staring into the abyss. Like, it is an absolute roller coaster, whether you're along the ride for the tariffs, the economy, consolidation of the market, but come well-funded and hang on. But it's going to be really cool looking back a few years from now. And we can, arguably say that we had the biggest impact in the electric boat business in the country. And I'd love for someone else, one of these, Marine Max or some other Goliath to come in here and either buy us or take this and run with it, because it would just make my job easier. Education and awareness is the biggest struggle right now. But marketing is the name of the game. And I would say come well funded, and like whatever you think your timeline's going to be, like double or triple it, because it is a very slow, painful process. And I tell people we've spent a lot of money learning what not to do over the last 3 years.
Yeah. And I know we talk a lot about the auto segment in this, but that's really the only segment that can even remotely correlate to the marine EV segment. And this is just my opinion and sort of my 10,000 feet looking down on the electrification of the boat business. You look at the past with the car market, right? So there were a ton of electric vehicles that came to market. I mean, Chevy came out with an electric S10, which actually later got recalled. They asked for them all back.
They had the EV1.
Yeah, EV1, the Chevy Bolt. These all came out in a time where supposedly there was some demand. And then all of a sudden, everything changed when Teslas came out. And while I don't know that we've necessarily had our quote unquote Tesla brought to market yet, I do think it's really close. And
yeah,
it's like one model away from gaining national attention. Now everyone's like, bing, like now it makes sense for everyone.
Yeah.
In a light that wasn't shown previously.
100% agreed, man. I think Purecraft was spearheading a lot of that, and unfortunately didn't make it just because they didn't hit a round of funding. And then I think ARC is getting more exposure than I think anybody right now.
I'm excited about ARC.
Same, and we need a lot of these champions, if you will, to take this and run with it and get exposure to it. Because that's our biggest problem right now.
I get really excited about ARC because that could set the standard. And it could set the standard so high that people say, well, how are they doing that? And then all of a sudden they're like, well, if they can do it, why can't we do it? And then it's just like, now you've got a bunch of really great competition, and good competition in any industry is phenomenal.
That's it. That catalyst in the automotive world was the Tesla Model 3 when it came out in, I think, 2017. And they got 1 million deposits. And the rest of the automotive world was like, holy crap, people actually want these. Yeah. And that's when all the R&D money came pouring in. And, don't get me wrong, it took some time to get some decent cars out there. But look at where we're at now. And you can get, I don't know, probably 100, 150 different plug-in vehicles. And a lot of them are awesome cars. So it's going to be pretty exciting to see how things evolve over the next couple of years.
Yeah. And, as the boat, the EV boat business matures, there's going to be advancements made in charging, and there's going to be advancements made at marinas. There's going to be just sort of operational advancements that are going to really help EVs. Like in the same way that they're proposing that you can charge your car in your garage with a wireless charging pad under. Maybe they'll have something similar like that for a boat. You never know. Maybe they can send current through.
Yeah, probably Tesla side of thing, wireless electricity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because that's Nikola Tesla. He's the one that invented it, or discovered it, as they say. And to wrap up the episode, I know I kind of warmed you up to this, but what is the best boating advice you've ever received?
Oof. I would say I would tell people to just give it a chance. I try to tell people, like, my biggest goal is to convince people that electric propulsion doesn't suck. And I've got this thing on my Facebook. It's a photo album where I post all these examples of it. But I think everyone, if they just opened their mind a little bit, used a little bit of critical thinking skills and educated themselves, they would realize, like, this stuff isn't all that bad. And just to give it a chance, because it makes sense in a lot of applications. There's a ton of variables to it. And, I would entertain anybody to reach out if they have questions, concerns, complaints, feedback, any bit of it. We love engaging with people and educating them. And sometimes it's like, hey, you're right. Your sport fisher isn't going to be electric anytime soon, but that's where that brutal honesty comes into play.
And how would someone contact you?
They can reach out to me. Cell phone number 757-206-2899. Electric Boat Dude on Instagram, or info@Electrified Marina, and all of our socials. But happy to chat with anyone about electric boats right now. That's all we do. We eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff.
Love it. But anyways, thank you so much. This is a great episode. A lot of good conversation here. Erick, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.